It is the Everton Byline. We are back for episode 19. I am Matt Jones, your host. Joining me as ever, Patrick Boylan. Paddy, how are you doing?
Good. Now I've got this kind of feeling of dread as I wait for an inevitable question about Everton number 19s in this case.
I think there are some great ones that come straight off the top of your head. Can you not? Do you even know who our current number 19 is?
Give me a list of some of the number 19s.
So some of them, there's obviously the current one, which is Vitaly Mykolenko. As an athletic Everton correspondent, you should definitely know that. And the other famous ones include Magai Gay,
Right.
great winger, and of course James Rodriguez.
Okay. Let's say then that James is probably the best out of those three.
All got great. What is it with left feet? All got sweet left feet playing wearing the number 19.
Yeah.
There's definitely a theme there. Or maybe it's Mykolenko not so much, but Magai Gay could hit a ball, certainly.
Well, I was about to say that I'm still not entirely sure which foot is Mykolenko's best. No, you can interpret that in a number of different ways, either as a positive or a negative, but I'll leave it there for now.
Did you not do your research on Everton number 19s then before this? I feel
No.
like now you should be well equipped.
No, I mean I know it's coming, so some more prep needed for episode 20, and I'm sure a stellar cast of former Everton number 20 next week.
I feel like this is one that the listeners maybe enjoy a little bit more than you, Paddy. But I'll rattle off some other ones anyway. So we've had Jibril Sidibe, Umar Niasse, Enner Valencia, Gerard Deulofeu, Christian Atsu, Dan Gosling, Nuno Valente, Nick Chadwick, Joe Max Moore, Abel Xavier, John Oster, Mark Ottinger, and Stuart Barlow. So, I mean, quite a spectrum there going from
some cool heroes in there.
Yeah, from Barlow to James is some range.
And I could also give you a very easy segue into our first talking point with Deulofeu.
Oh, yeah. See, you've had...
And it's very famous. This is not scripted, by the way, but yeah, there you go.
If you'd done your research, you could have set me up for that, and it would have sounded amazing. But let's do our admin stuff first. We are sponsored by the Bridewell. Which is on YouTube. You can see their logo in the top right-hand corner of your screen. Always a great place to go in town, especially this time of year, as I always say, with the nights rolling in and the festive period fast approaching. So do get down there if you're in Liverpool. Want to take shelter from this inclement weather, or just stop in for a nice pint while you're doing your Christmas shopping. If you are watching us on YouTube, do hit us with a thumbs up, do subscribe, do comment on anything we have to say. And if you're listening to us on iTunes, Spotify, whatever else, do leave us a rating, do leave us a review. All these things help. Paddy, I suppose this time last week we were expecting to be talking about the Merseyside derby. Wolves feel so long ago now that we've sort of decided not to go into that too deeply at all. So typical Everton, we have a 4-0 win, and I'm not even going to talk about it that much. But obviously the big news of the weekend was the derby being called off. I think probably from about Friday afternoon onwards, it felt like it was a real possibility. And, you know, I was working, I speak to Joe in our work, who speaks to the clubs and the local authorities. And I think he was sort of getting the sense that if things did turn out to be as they predicted with the weather, then that it would get postponed. But everyone wanted to give it a chance, see if the forecast improved. Obviously, it didn't. And when I was getting the train into the office on Saturday morning, I had a feeling that it's not going to be long before this goes. And around 8:30, we got the nod. But what was your sort of 24 hours or longer looking like before that? Did you have an inkling as well that it was going to get called?
Yeah. So I think the most important thing here, obviously, is that a lot of money goes into preparing for Premier League games. Clubs have security, they pay casual staff, they have a whole load of food that is prepared for guests in lounges and just kind of regular match going fans. So in those circumstances, they will do more or less everything they can do to get these games on. If you look at the weekend, I know all top flight fixtures in Wales were called off on the Friday. For the weekend, most of the Premier League games, apart from Everton's, went ahead. But I think there were some quite unique circumstances here when you look at the weather conditions, when you look at, as I wrote over the weekend, when you look at the quite unique nature of Goodison as an old stadium, where it is in the city in relation to these kind of compact streets of terraced houses, and the idea of cramming in effectively 40,000 match-going fans into that small area with kind of flying debris around and high wind swirling. I think that was just a bit too. That was obviously a step too far. That worried the authorities and the clubs enough to call this off. So, I mean, I'd seen the forecast from kind of the midweek, and obviously it was a storm rolling in. I think everybody was a bit wary of what that would bring. Friday comes and it's bad, but probably still okay enough to get a game on. And I think that was when I first started asking questions on that Friday afternoon. At that point, the club were expecting the game to go ahead as planned, but had to see how the forecast would turn out. And clearly there was an inclination that if the forecast was as bad, if the weather turned out to be as bad as the forecast suggested, then the game would struggle to go ahead. And I think anybody that woke up on Saturday morning on Merseyside would know that it was every bit as bad, maybe slightly worse. So the game was called off. 8 a.m. meeting between a safety advisory group assembled by the council, the Liverpool City Council, made up of a variety of different people, transport representatives, people from the two clubs, obviously as well had emergency services, police, everybody else in attendance. And I think the right decision was made, as disruptive as it is, as disappointing as it was for some fans. Right decision was made just after 8 a.m. on Saturday. So still a day in work for me, Matt. But instead of writing about football, I was writing about Storm Dara and safety advisory groups and everything else. A little bit more dry. I suppose the one saving grace, looking at it now, is that we weren't speaking about an Everton derby defeat. So more mercy.
I was in work as well, and like one thing that I know we try and bring a bit of a journalistic angle to this show, and some people listen might find this boring, but one of the things that I did find interesting was that the thirst for news around this, and I suppose the fact that we were playing Liverpool as well comes into it, but was so huge in the immediate aftermath, because I think you had working on the desk, we had the initial piece, like I said, from Joe saying it was cancelled. Then we had explainer from Joe as to how they came to this decision, and then we had another piece from Ian Doyle sort of explaining when the game could be replayed, and like the amount of people that were going onto those stories was absolutely remarkable. And I think there's a wider aspect when it's the derby. I think it's obviously amplified a lot more when it's there's a big storm. I think there's a general sort of public interest in it as well. But you're right. I was, when it got called up, I was sort of thinking, I'm down to do an 8-4 shift here. What I'm going to do for the rest of the day. But that desire to find out more about it was still there. I suppose it sort of is to an extent, Paddy, because it's one of those where not so much because of Everton, but because of Liverpool's packed schedule and the annoying fact that they look on course to have a very good season means that it's not entirely obvious where this is going to be played. I think I've seen some people pitching the potential New Year's Day one, which would be a little bit weird. There's another 2 dates in February, midweek games, but I was reading again around them that they'll be on the same days as potential Champions League playoff games, which BT or TNT have, and then it's whether they would be willing to give up one of their blue chip games, which they've got the rights for, to be played on the same nights as them. So if that doesn't happen, it gets pushed back again, and then you've got Liverpool potentially playing more midweek games with the Champions League round of 16, quarterfinals, whatever, coming back. So as much as those February dates on the calendar look like obvious slots for the match to go into, it's maybe not quite that straightforward.
No, and there are a load of stakeholders, if you want to call them that need to be consulted, not just the two clubs, but as you say, broadcasters will have a large say in this, as we've seen, maybe to our detriment over the past week with the Everton Peterborough Thursday night FA Cup game, police and various others. I think there will be a desire to get this played as soon as possible. I mean, famous last words here, but I can't see how a New Year's Day game works out given the packed schedule. One of the things that really hammers home to me is just how much football is now a 365-day-a-year sport, a 365-day-a-year business. If we're being honest, like, we're talking now about days months in advance that are only possibles, and they're dependent on a number of different outcomes as they are. And that's before we even get into the Christmas schedule. It's before we get into the end of the season. And a lot of this at the moment is just trying to predict the outcome of various things. That was the advice given by the clubs. An inevitable follow-up to the announcement about the postponement was when is this going to actually be played then? Because that's what everybody in truth wants to know. And their guidance was that they think a lot of this will depend on cup progression for various clubs. So you've got Liverpool, that very key thing you mentioned about the Champions League and what it means for them to finish towards the top. Potentially then they don't have a playoff and more dates open up for the derby, the rescheduled derby. Everton are against Peterborough in the third round of the FA Cup. If they win that, then they will have more dates and potential replays and at various points further down the line. So there's a lot to consider, and I don't think we have an answer yet, as much as people would want there to be. I think what it does do is it raises the possibility, it increases the chances that we get a final Merseyside derby at Goodison under the lights, as I think should always have been the case.
It feels like that's going to be an almost certainty now, doesn't it? I think unless they both go out I think unless they both got the cup before the 5th round, and they've obviously got both got home teams.
Yeah.
In the next round, which they should win against lower league opposition, and then if one of them gets through the 4th round, then I think it's almost will have to be a midweek game at some point.
That feels more fitting, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, think back to last season's Merseyside derby and how great an occasion that was at Goodison. I don't like. I'm quite traditional in kickoff times and schedules matters. I'm sure you probably are. Like, it's, for me, Saturday 3:00 is still the iconic. That's the must do wherever possible. I'm failing that night games, either later on the weekend or in the midweek. 12:30 for that broadcast slot, that TNT in the UK broadcast slot, doesn't cut it to the same extent. So let's hope we get a great Goodison derby occasion under the light and like a proper fitting send-off. And obviously a lot will depend on Everton on the pitch and how they're doing there and whether they are capable of fashioning that kind of moment.
Well, that's the next part of this first point, and it's been interesting to see sort of in the aftermath of this game. There's been a little bit of a phony war between both sets of supporters in regards to, well, I think it benefits us the most because we've got potential new owners coming in, and we'll have January, and we're not playing very well. And then the red side are saying, well, we've got Alisson, Canate, McAllister will have missed the game, and a lot of other players. Ignoring the fact they've got a lot of other good players who've stepped in and done all right over the last few weeks, but just from a purely Everton point of view, I don't want to sit here and debate whether it benefits Everton more than Liverpool or vice versa. Do you feel like it's come at a good time? This, I suppose, there'll be people listening to this, and the poor lad who came over from Australia, for example, you couldn't say the game being postponed was ever good with that in mind. But are the crumbs of comfort, you think, from an Everton perspective with this? Because just from a purely fan perspective, really. I mean, me and Les did a little podcast in the Denby on Saturday, and I think he was so spot on in what he was saying. The getting up on Saturday morning, he kind of felt like this was going to be an obligation rather than an occasion. And I think this, it's not guaranteed by any means, because Everton need to get their act together. They need to get the takeover through. They need to, improve. They need to make good signings. But this gives them more of a chance to make this an occasion as something to be cherished, as opposed to something which we go to with our teeth clenched, a little bit terrified about.
Yeah, and I think that description is not just for Merseyside derbies. I think we've always approached these games in recent years with trepidation because of Everton's record against Liverpool over, admittedly, an extended period of time. But I think that's just the way fans are feeling in general ahead of every Everton match right now. I mean, it was probably the same ahead of Wolves on Wednesday night. The amount of people, and this is just anecdotal, But the amount of people that were saying to me, "Oh, I'm not going," and I usually go, or I'm just not up for this game. And I think that's a really sad place. We've spoken about this before. I think that's a really sad place for Everton to be. So if we want to put this positive spin on it, it's that. It's that Everton will hopefully be in a different place with takeover, with fresh impetus, hopefully looking at January with some improvements in the market as well. Although we still don't know which way that's going to go, obviously. That's the positive spin. I think the negative spin is that it was a good time to play Liverpool, in theory, given the players that were out. I know it's kind of joking, but more than one person has said to me already that the win probably would have been a bit of a leveler on the pitch, in the sense that Liverpool like to, in the main, get the ball down and play and control the game and have a possession-based style now under Arne Slot. The idea of those corners from Dwight McNeil swinging in with Kevin Kelleher, who obviously flapped a Newcastle goal in the midweek, trying to catch the ball, trying to judge the flight, and Tarkowski, Calvert-Lewin, etc., Branthwaite attacking it. That promised to be, I think, pretty advantageous to Everton. So let's see. My instinct actually was that it was a good time to play Liverpool, particularly after a positive result in midweek. But let's not kid ourselves. There's still a multitude of problems with this team right now. And the more of those that can be patched up ahead of the final Goodison derby, the better.
Yeah, I suppose it just builds that extra bit of anticipation, doesn't it? Because I think I was speaking on shows last week, and like it kind of caught me surprised a little bit after the Wolves game that, like, oh, we've got 2 days to the last game against Liverpool at Goodison Park. And I think because we've been so wrapped up in poor performances, we obviously had the United result, we've got uncertainty off the pitch. It's just sort of kind of gone under the radar. And like as much as playing them is never nice, you know, I'd want us to go into it safe from relegation, maybe building a little bit with maybe a couple of new players who we're excited about, as opposed to the situation we're in now. What I don't want, Paddy, is like late April, early May, because, you know, we're not even going to say the words, but there are bad things that could potentially happen.
We said this last season as well, though, didn't we? We said this last season with the April game, and that turned out well. And I think actually, if we could have fashioned that to be the final ever Goodison derby, that would have been a perfect way to send the place off.
You know what? I think I was thinking this. Like, there was some parallels between that game and this one that would have happened on Saturday, in the sense that I think we obviously had a big win against the relegation rival before it. Yeah. Took the pressure off us a little bit. They I think they're nowhere near as sort of jaded as they were in April last season as they are now. But there's just a few signs against Newcastle that they may be feeling the pinch a little bit after a few injuries and such a good run. So I don't know. There's a few little aspects, but listen, who knows? Hopefully they've fallen off a cliff completely and are well down the table, and we're moving up. But we'll see. I've got to be optimistic, Paddy. Come on. Let's move on to our second point as well. Actually, one of the things obviously that is looming over the club is the takeover, and there's been a few sort of developments going on that have got people a little bit worried over the last week or so. In regards to 777 ACAP, I'm just reading this, Paddy, from one of your colleagues at the Athletic, Matt Slater, who said over the weekend, those who following 777's crash, the Utah insurance regulator has blocked partner/lender ACAP from doing new business in the state. Other states may follow, unlikely to delay the Everton takeover, but may make ACAP less able to take a discount payment from the Freaking Group. Bad news for other 777 clubs. There's some interesting stuff on there in regards to a few other developments as well. And he also confirmed, Paddy, that Nolan Partners is recruiting a CEO. To quote Matt, I believe it's done, and a smaller firm is doing the chair search. Non-execs have been approached too. The board will be fine. So I think there's a bit of concern about this ACAP stuff. You know, I texted you last week a little bit of a panic about it. But it all still seems to be relatively on track based on what your colleague said there. And there's no major indications or no big red sirens yet that this is going to go potentially the way of previous takeovers and fall through. It still seems like it's all relatively okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was confidence. That was part of the reason the Freakins came back to the table in the first place. was confidence that an arrangement could be found. They obviously reached an agreement with ACAP over repayment, which was part of that, but it still needs to go through the courts in New York, as we've spoken about previously. Nobody thinks this takeover has been knocked off course yet, and I think it is worth pointing out as well that we're talking about one state of 50 or more in the US, in Utah. And at the time of recording, I'm not sure anybody else necessarily followed suit. So it's certainly not all of the states in the US, and it's certainly not all of ACAP's businesses and assets, or 777's businesses and assets even as well. When this was agreed a few months ago, the very first indication we got was hopefully before Christmas. And I still think the aim is mid-December, all being well. We're very close to mid-December now. But I think obviously this still hasn't quite been done. It still hasn't quite got over the line. So we're all kind of waiting for that moment with bated breath and hoping it comes sooner rather than later. Still think it's more likely to happen before Christmas than after, although there is a small chance it pushes on afterwards if we get to a point where it's still not done and the Premier League offices shut down for quite a lengthy, if we're being honest, Christmas break, given what we know about the Premier League.
How long are they off for, do you know?
I mean, there was consternation last year because it was felt that they were off for a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Although at that point, this was over 777, so probably not the worst thing in the world for Everton for them to have that time off at the Premier League. I mean, Matt's right in what he said about Nolan Partners. Obviously, that's something I'd reported and mentioned on this show a few times. That was over the chief executive. Search is ongoing with a parallel company, not the same one, but a different company for a chairman. You'll probably have new non-executive directors. You'll have a new board. I'd expect some of those to be in situ when this is confirmed, but maybe not all. But positive work going on there. Again, that gives you a sense that the Freakins are expecting this to happen. It's a case of when, not if. So let's see. Let's see. It's still not over the line yet, but it's close. And that kind of mid-December timeframe kind of looms large. And the hope will be for this to be done before Christmas, so Everton can properly, with new ownership, look forward to the second half of the season, tackle the January window, and have everybody in situ. It'd be lovely and a positive news story to focus on for once.
Yeah, you said there about the announcements. Is that how you anticipate? I mean, this might be entirely speculation. Is this how you anticipate it will be kind of announced, that we might get some announcements about key positions on the board or appointments to the board, and then it might be confirmed the takeover's been done, a day or two later, further down the line? Or
no, I think that's probably the wrong order.
Do you think it'll just go takeover and then just be here are all the people we've appointed?
Probably.
It feels like one of those we've got to get the ducks in a row, and it will be statement, maybe one big statement or statement after statement after statement.
Yeah, probably. And I don't think it really matters there. I think the most important thing is that there are some key players in the new regime in situ for the start of this, so that they can help. And I think we've spoken about this previously, but the board, and particularly CEO and chair, are so important to the vision of a football club that you kind of need them there before you do anything else, in my opinion. I mean, there's a trickle-down effect from particularly CEO to director of football, and then from, in a normal hierarchy, from director of football to manager. So ideally, you want to be in a position where you have those people in place so you can make those decisions on Thelwell and on Dyche as quickly as possible. So that would be the aim. I think that is also the expectation, that at least some new names will be announced more or less straight away. I think others will take longer, as you would expect, because there are a lot of hires to make here. Everton have been operating with a really threadbare board and an executive team for some time. But it gives you a bit of an indication as to the work that's going on now, the fact that the confidence that the Friedkins think this will happen, it is a case of when, not if. And I think it's just about getting those final issues over the line, getting all documentation sorted, getting the legalities sorted, getting the issue with ACAP, if it can be, and Leadenhall resolved and resolved quickly. At the time of recording, we still don't have any evidence that that's been done, but there's still confidence it can be. So it's still a positive outlook, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you would say so, and I think that the thing that sort of not made me fearful the other day, but certainly made me think that this is not going to be automatically all sorted, is what's been going on at United with Dan Ashworth leaving the football club after 6 months, because you've got a situation there where Ineos have come in and listen. I think over the summer, with the way in which they approached the Branthwaite thing, the Evertonians have kind of looked at them and thought, not quite sure about the way they're doing business. It seems a bit silly, but everyone seems to think they were doing well. They've thrown a lot of money at it. It felt like they went, who's the best CEO we can get? And they went and got Barada. They thought, who's the best sporting director we can get? And they went and got Ashworth, sort of like a money's no object kind of thing. And they've picked, the two best people in the world, they would probably say, in their respective roles, and it's not worked out for them. So I think as much as we're all hoping, I think that the main thing is the relief it will give Everton financially more than anything. Fingers crossed, in terms of just not being concerned about the day-to-day run of the football club. Hopefully, I mean, stuff like PSR and that gets sorted very quickly. But the appointments of personnel and getting that blend right, and getting people in who maybe aren't at the very top of the food chain, if you will, in football, which we might not be able to track, but getting them to work together well is not going to be something that there's going to naturally just be immediately fine, is it?
No, and I think the analogy I'd use is it's the same with a group of footballers. You don't always align the top best 11 players and just say, go out and do it. Sometimes you need those kind of 6 out of 10 types that will knit everything together and be that bit of glue. And it'll be the same here. Like, I think the main failing, looking at this purely from the outside at Manchester United, one of the things that really comes across, or one of the things that seems to come across, is the idea that there's little synergy between different strands of the ownership group, and you've got loads of different cooks all part of this process getting involved. You've got a CEO. I mean, at Man United, they had both a director of football, which was Dan Ashworth at the time, and a technical director too, which I believe is Jason Wilcox. He had a head of recruitment. He had the owner, Ratcliffe, heavily involved. And let's not forget, they have other owners as well in the Glazers still. An awful lot of people being involved there, but if they're not all on the same page, as we've seen in Everton before, it doesn't matter how good your personnel is. You're not going to get things done in the right way. And I think there's been a breakdown. There's been a bit of dysfunction there for whatever reason. That's led to Ashworth's very premature departure. Now, if you're Everton, you're learning lessons from this. It's that you need to make sure that everything's joined up, that CEO and chair and board and director of football, those relationships are all as strong as they can be, and they're all on the same page. They all want the same thing, and they're all operating from the same playbook. I mean, I look back at why the Moshiri operation at Everton, the Moshiri regime, has failed, and fundamentally it's not been for a lack of trying. It's not been because the money hasn't been there. We know at the start the money was there in bucket loads before it tailed off. The problem was that you had an owner wanting to do one thing, a board and chairman wanting to do another, and then kind of director of football and manager as middlemen kind of going between, and sometimes having their own unique visions again. So there are lessons to be learned here, and I think it just goes to show, firstly, how mad the power of owners to basically pull rank, but also how mad football can be, that you can hire somebody and have them on gardening leave effectively for longer than they are in the job. It's just such a waste. And he's a very competent, well-regarded operator, Ashworth. So I think that sent shockwaves through a lot of the game, and with people at United. You kind of just look at it and go, what on earth? Man United can be that club, but Everton want to move away from that. They don't want to be that what on earth club. they want to just be kind of calm, competent, and that'll do. That'll do.
Yeah, it's the circus. It feels like it's always in town, doesn't it? Old Trafford and Goodison certainly, but yeah, hopefully we can slowly move away from that. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they do it, because I imagine the Freakins will want to say in these appointments, but I also feel like I kind of get the merits of getting your CEO in to make the appointments to the board and handle that side of things. And I always like the idea of the director of football having total autonomy over the football side of things. But as you've said, I think powerful figures in football, billionaires, often find it difficult to not interfere when
they
things
put
don't
their
work.
own money in.
Yeah, exactly. So it's I think that's the balancing act you've got to find, isn't it? And it's difficult.
Me and you, Matt, play Football Manager or FIFA, but these billionaires do that with their own money.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. The risk is you become a billionaire's plaything, and given the amount of money that's required, you've got to hope you find the right billionaire, and that's got to be Everton's hope.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll wrap up, Paddy, on something of a lighter note, or maybe not, depending on what you think of it. But just the video doing the rounds, I got sent it by about 6 or 7 of my red mates last week of the stadium and the water clattering down the steps. Another comparison to United you could maybe make with the way in which Old Trafford's roof was leaking in that horrific rain last year. And just anyone who's not in the Merseyside area, I think was it Wednesday last week? The rain was horrendous. Like I've never seen anything quite like it before. Like trying to drive around here, trying to get places, it was unbelievably heavy. So there is some context to that, but obviously the video's done the round. The Reds have had the jokes in WhatsApp groups and all that, about the stadium being underwater, all these sorts of things. A few headlines on the stories where it never rains, but it pours for Everton. This is obviously after the 4-0 loss to United as well. But Everton are quite calm about it, Paddy. What did you think when you saw that? Because it is quite alarming to see, isn't it? I suppose at a point where I think we're a week or so away from the official handover date for the stadium.
Yeah, so I mean, the stadium is meant to be handed over by the constructors, Lango Rourke, by the end of the year. So that handover is coming very soon as well. I mean, the initial thought's not a particularly rational one, because I think sometimes you see these things and you experience these things and you don't process them fully, so you respond in this emotional way. And the emotional way for me was, oh God, that's really worrying, and what the hell's going on here? Everton Stadium's already flooded, and how much damage is being caused, and are they going to have to do something new to the pitch? And what's it going to be like if they have similar storms over the coming years when they're actually in the stadium properly and playing games there? And then you take a step back, and then you obviously, as a journalist, you have the conversations to establish what's gone on, what the damage is, and what the next steps are. And certainly people clubside were a lot more relaxed, as you point out, than I was initially when I'd seen that. And I think that was because, first of all, there couldn't be that much damage because the internal part of the stadium, all the fittings and the lounges, they've not been put in place yet. What will happen is that the stadium will be the structure of the stadium and everything else has been handled by Lango Rourke. When the club get the keys at the end of December, early January, they then will take control with other partners of the internal fit out, making sure everything's ready for executive boxes and everything else, the inside of the stadium, if you want to call it that. Now, that's not there at the moment. Had Everton been in a situation where it had already been installed, then I think it would have been concerning, worrying. But the reporters have no kind of lasting damage. I think even the day after the game, it had all just about cleared up. And the issue, as far as I can tell, is that the full drainage system at the new stadium hadn't been installed yet, and that led to those problems. I think it's due to be installed within the next couple of weeks. So hopefully there are no more storms before then. Hopefully that works as everyone expects, and then we don't have to have any more of these viral videos doing the rounds, which, let's be honest, not only Reds were sending, but I had like fans of City and Spurs and all these other clubs going like, what the hell's going on at Everton? Is the stadium kind of effectively sunk already? I mean, the reality is a lot more actually boring, but in this case, positive for Everton.
Yeah, I think for me, like, I didn't panic massively because, like, the one thing I'm relatively calm about with the football club is that they've got pretty much all of the stadium stuff right. Like, if this was like something else where someone had sent a video of to do with any aspect of the club, and I'll think, oh my word, but yeah, I suppose the other thing as well is like we're so close to the end now, you don't think of it, as you said, as like just a structure that's not finished yet, because it looks really good and we're getting all these videos through, the pictures there. I think we're starting to think of it more as a building, and might sound corny, but like our next home kind of thing. And maybe there's that kind of emotional attachment that's starting to build now with people. And when you see videos like that, you think, oh no, am I going to be downstairs getting me pint and be washed away by a wave coming down the stairs?
Matt, it's like, again, going back to an analogy, it's like buying a house that's unfurnished.
Yeah.
And what Everton need to do now is to stick the sofa in, get the nice big TV, make it homely and comforting for the supporters who are going to go there week in, week out. And just as well that the house was flooded without the brand new sofa in and the electrical appliances and everything else, because it might have been more severe. But I mean, these things have been done in a way for a reason, haven't they? I mean, the drainage will go in, and then they can do the internal fit out and everything else. And it's close. It's close, but I still think that, like you, I kind of look at the stadium and think that'll handle itself and that'll be fine. The issue, we've got a takeover situation that needs to get over the line, obviously, and that's really important, hopefully soon. And then you've also got an immediate situation on the pitch with a team that looks like it could be in another relegation battle, but let's really hope it isn't, and what everything that could bring. So it's hard to kind of look at this until it's all done, but we are nearly there.
I'll tell you what, Paddy, in those storms, if you're sat at the very top of that, is it West Stand where the press is going to be?
West Stand, yeah. So I don't know if you saw, but the club released for season ticket holders the virtual guide where you could basically see the seat view in different parts of the ground. Now, because that was only for people that were choosing season tickets, they didn't have one for the press, which in a way was slightly disappointing for me, because I wanted to see the seat. So what I actually did was I went right to the back row of the West Stand to try and get a comparable view of what it'd be like, and I think the view will be stunning. I mean, I will no longer have the post just to my right that obscures the corner kick taker at the park end when Dwight McNeil's trying to swing one in.
The wind could be whistling in there though in those winter days when you're that high up. I mean,
it could be. It could be, but I'm not thinking about that now. I'll have a moan about that as and when it happens nearer to the time, and rest assured, obviously, I would moan about that if it happens. But let's see, let's put a more positive spin on things.
There we go. You'll have a bit more space, definitely.
We'll definitely have more space, but just about anywhere else would have more space at this point.
Yeah, and I was thinking on Saturday morning, if this game goes ahead, like the reporters' fingers trying to type in that weather will be frozen to the bone. So yeah, thankfully that game got called off on Saturday just for from that point of view. But yeah, we will wrap it up there. They managed to get 3 topics out of a weekend where we didn't even play a game. It's Arsenal coming up next away, which we know what that usually means, but let's see. Paddy will be down there. We will be. Well, assuming you're going to be down there. I've not actually asked you yet, but yeah, yeah, and we'll be back on next Tuesday morning. We are sponsored by the Bridewell Pub. If you're watching us on YouTube, do let us know what you think about any of those topics today. Takeover, Derby being rescheduled, or the stadium wave. Hit like, hit subscribe, and if you're listening to us, leave us a rating, leave us a review. All these things help. Well, that has been your Everton Byline, episode 19. Up the Toffees. We'll